So we are going to talk about nursing care of patient on dialysis. Why is it an important topic? Because patients who are undergoing dialysis, especially if we talk about an ICU, they are critically ill. Even the patients who are undergoing dialysis in the dialysis ward are not very stable, and the physiological changes happen very, very fast. So as a critical care nurse, whether the dialysis is happening in the ICU or in the dialysis ward, you should be aware of what could be the complications and what are the nursing medical concerns which you should be aware of. So what are the clinical issues which haunt us while we take care of a hemodialysis or SLED patient? The first and foremost is preparation. Whatever you do, if you are ill prepared, you cannot find you cannot find the solutions when there is a crisis. So prepare yourself. You should know what is required, who is a good dialysis technician, when do you need to call for help for your consultant or a senior nurse or a dialysis technician whenever the patient is on dialysis, whether the technician is stationed there in a critically ill patient or not is again the responsibility of the nurse who is looking after that patient. So preparation involves human resources required for dialysis. It requires machine, RO flow, and many other things which we all are aware of. At times, especially during COVID era, dialysis might have to be done in an isolation facility. So the risk to patient is more, and the preparations which we require are also increased in terms of PPE and infection control. So your safety is also a major concern always. Assessment. Assessment of the patient. If you are in ICU, you should be knowing when this patient needs dialysis. The critical care fellow or consultant might not be around all the time. They might miss it. If the patient is having severe acidosis, patient is on bicarbonate, probably the timing of dialysis has come, or the patient might be on maintenance hemodialysis. You should know it better, and you should alert your consultant that this patient might require dialysis. Other parameters like hyperkalemia, severe acidosis, at times renal replacement therapies have been done for other indications. As an ICU nurse, you should be knowing those indications also. Second part of assessment is patient assessment. Is the patient ready for dialysis? Is the dialysis catheter in? Is it properly secured? Whatever equipment is required is ready or not? Separate facility if the patient is HBC, HCV, HIV, or COVID. So there is a separate facility in dialysis or at times in an isolation ICU also. So those facilities should be available. You should be aware of what all events can happen while you are preparing for dialysis, inserting catheters, or during dialysis. We are aware of all those events. While we insert a catheter, there could be accidents, bleeding, hemothorax, pneumothorax, false positioning, arterial injuries, stroke can happen. So you should be aware of all these complications. During dialysis, we'll be discussing in greater detail what all complications can arise. Monitoring while the patient is on dialysis, especially the ICU patient, the monitor should be reflective of the patient's physiology. The dialysis machine screen should also be monitored. As a critical care nurse, you should be aware of some parameters, but you should make it sure if the patient is critical or an alarm is going on continuously or there is a red alarm, your dialysis technician should be there. Infection control, especially of the catheter, dialysis catheter or the device, whatever you are using for dialysis, is very, very important. Infection control of the machine, of the filters is again very, very important. Education, especially if we talk about dialysis in the dialysis ward. This is an important opportunity to interact with patients, know how the patient is feeling, what are the problems patient is feeling. It is also time for nutritional and psychological assessment, especially while dialysis is being started. So this education and nutritional assessment is more of a role for a nurse post-student dialysis, whereas these all are the responsibility of any nurse who is looking after a patient undergoing dialysis. The beauty of critical care medicine and a critical care nurse is to provide support to organ failure. And probably after ventilation, what organ supports most in ICU, fails most in ICU is kidney. And if any organ support therapy is used to the maximum in ICU, it is dialysis. So you should all be aware about the intricacies of dialysis. How is it done, when is it done, where it is done, what all you need to monitor before and after dialysis, you should be well aware of. How is it done? It is done by a technique which involves pumping the patient's blood through an array of semi-permeable membrane, which we commonly call filters, which separate the blood from a dialysate. We all are familiar with dialysate. These are the fluids. These are solutions of crystalloids, which include sodium, calcium, bicarb, potassium in varying concentrations. It is not our prerogative to know it, but the technician who is posted in dialysis. Then osmotic change occurs across this membrane and various uremic metabolites will pass to the dialysate fluid, and then dialysate fluid will flow in the opposite direction, pull out all these toxins, if I call them, and decrease the concentration of various uremic compounds in the blood. So this requires adequate access to the patient's circulation. It could be either a fistula, or it could be by an artificial graft, or it could be through a catheter, which is the most commonly thing which is done in ICU. So you should have distinct protocols in each unit. If it is an ICU, you should have a protocol for dialysis, for SLAT, for CRT. Today we'll be focusing more on dialysis and SLAT, and in another setting we'll discuss about CRT. These protocols should be for maintenance of machine, utilization of machine, timely check of these machines. Some ICU dialysis is not done that frequently, so we should not be in a disarray scenario while we require dialysis all of a sudden. The procedure, the insertion of catheter, the initiation of dialysis, maintenance, everything should be protocolized, and as a critical care nurse, you should be aware of all this. Machine sanitization is very, very important. If peritoneal dialysis is being done, which is resorted to infrequently now in ICU settings, but some ICU still do it, then PD catheter care, dressing, treatment, how is the effluent, is it dirty? You have to look at all these things. Flushing new PD catheters, if there is peritonitis, then how to take care of peritonitis, when to suspect peritonitis, when to alert the nephrologist or the critical care consultant, what investigations are required while the patient is on dialysis, has the patient received vaccination, and what are the records and treatment flow sheets for that particular patient. So the first thing which we require while we do a dialysis in ICU is access to patient circulation. How do we do it? We do the dialysis catheter. Where it is inserted? Jugular, subclavian, or femoral. It is inserted with the same infection control strictness which is utilized for central line. It should be inserted with an ultrasound guidance. It is a bigger bore cannula, so we have to take more of precautions while we insert these catheters. Once the catheter has been inserted after proper consent, the next step is maintenance of the catheter. We have to be very, very vigilant about any oozing. We should not be handling these catheters with dirty hands. You should always use alcohol hand rub. You should look at the catheter site. Is there some tunnel infection? Is there some port infection? Is there any collection in the catheter which looks dirty? It needs a flush. Is there a clot in the catheter? So as a critical care nurse, you have to be very, very vigilant with these catheters. Though the dialysis technicians are also very, very fixed to their catheters, but again, if the patient is in ICU, this is also your responsibility. Don't leave it to the dialysis technicians. You can handle dialysis catheters much more brilliantly than a dialysis technician. But whoever does it, other person should know, and it should be documented in the patient records that dressing has been done, catheter has been fixed. Access to dialysis machine and dialyzer with a semi-permeable membrane. Once The catheter is in, you will be calling your colleagues, the dialysis technician or the nephrologist. They will put an order which will be passed on to the dialysis technician. He will set the dialysis machine with the flow rates and the dialysate whichever is required. So the solution has to be appropriate. The dialysis bath has to be appropriate. Again, I will try to re-emphasize how important is the role of an ICU nurse. Most of the time, these dialysis technicians are in habit of outpatient dialysis. Those patients who have been coming to them every now and then. They are not unstable. They are not critical. Their potassiums are generally in reasonable range. And generally, they don't have a coagulopathy or thrombocytopenia to the extent that is there in ICU patients. So you need to sensitize your technicians on all these aspects. Every aspect is important, and we all have seen, you all as nurses must have seen, how even the smallest of mistake by anyone can be catastrophic to the patient. Often when 2K bath is required, he will put a 3K bath, and then hyperkalemia will follow. So we have to be very, very careful. If we say heparin free, as an ICU nurse, you should be vigilant that heparin is not used. Timing, you should know what is the UF rate. Ask the technician how much UF we are removing every hour. If there is hypotension, then you might need to alert your senior colleagues or the dialysis technician. You might need to cut down on the UF. So you have to be aware of these all things. You should know how long we have planned dialysis, because there could be other interventions which have been planned for the same patients. And ICU nurse is probably the center point of all communications. If you know the things, it will be easier for all of them. Generally, this hemodialysis, if we talk about in the outpatient, it will be generally 3 or 2 times in a week, 3-hour session. So when the hemodialysis procedure is being initiated, first thing is circulation has to be accessed. We have discussed it could be through a subjugular, subclavian, or a femoral route. Unless contraindicated, they will administer heparin. So you have to be very, very careful. If it is heparin free, you have to make it sure it is heparin free. Then this dialysis solution will surround the membrane and flows in the opposite direction. Dialysis solution, what it is highly purified water with varying concentration of sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, chloride, and dextrose. Either bicarbonate or acetate to maintain proper pH. At times, if the patient is very, very coagulopathic or bleeding, we might do a heparin free, or we might do just a circuit anticoagulation with EDT or various other techniques. So we have to be aware of the patient's coagulopathy also. Via the process of diffusion, wastes are removed in the form of solutes. These are metabolic waste, acid-base components, and electrolytes. So it is a very, very simple procedure which has been standardized world over. While the circulation is being assessed, there could be complications. So always do an X-ray if you have excess jugular or subclavian. While they initiate dialysis through this catheter, the flow might be compromised. Patient might just turn his limb or move his neck around. So you have to be helpful to the dialysis technician. It is not their terrain, so you have to help them out in all these scenarios about how to do it easily. While we initiate dialysis, especially if it is an old catheter, patient is coming as an outpatient, there are colonizations, there are colonies of bacteria which are on the catheter hub. And if you do not clean it properly, the chances of these colonies getting distributed into the bloodstream is high, which can lead to septic shock. This happens at times. You initiate dialysis either because the patient is hypovolemic, patient lands up into hypotension or shock, or because of this jump of colonies from the dialysis catheter, patient lands in shock. So you have to be aware of all these complications and what is the etiology of all these complications. The solute waste which are there in the fluid can now be discarded. Ultrafiltration will also remove excess water. After cleansing, the blood will be returned to the client patient via the access route. So there could be complications related to vascular access. It could be trauma, it could be infection, it could be arterial injury, it could be peritoneal injury, catheter clotting, it could lead to CV, central venous thrombosis, stenosis, ischemia of the affected limb, development of aneurysm, and various other complications. So whenever you have inserted a femoral line, you always keep an eye on the limb. The limb should not get swollen. The limb should not get cold and clammy and ischemic. If you have inserted a jugular or subclavian, always do a check X-ray. Even if insertion has failed, then also you have to do a check X-ray. Look at the site. There could be hematoma which is evolving. What happens if it is not a heparin-free dialysis? At the time of insertion, there was no swelling, and after a few hours, you see the swelling has increased. The airway can get compromised. So you have to be very, very alert about these complications. And if you see the hematoma is increasing, you have to alert your physicians or senior nurses also. So these complications you have to be aware. You have to detect these complications and be part of the comprehensive team which is dealing with complications. Complications do happen. We regret when we fail to recognize and treat these complications. So should we be very, very aggressive while we identify these complications. Pre-dialysis care. Assess for weight will determine amount of fluid to be removed during dialysis. If your ICU bed is having a capacity to weigh the patient, you have to weigh the patient. Vital signs. If the patient is already very, very hypertensive on 2 vasopressors and still not stable, you will not jump to SLED or hemodialysis. You can just give a hint to your physician whether should go for CRRT. If there is concomitant brain injury, you ask your physician, can we go for CRRT? Vital signs, blood pressure for hypo or hypertension, temperature, what is the respiratory status of the patient, are there signs of fluid overload which will help us to know how much fluid to be removed. Potassium levels, because this will determine how much potassium is added in the dialysate fluid. Drugs. As a critical care nurse, many of the drugs which pass through the dialysis membrane like piperacillin, folic acid and many other drugs have to be given after dialysis. So you should be aware of these drugs, and each drug has a different PKPD, pharmacokinetics and dynamics, and depends on that drug. So do a thorough research about all the drugs, what drug might need to be given after the dialysis, or what drug needs a dose modification while the patient is on dialysis. If the blood pressure is critically low, obviously we have to hold the antihypertensive with discussion with your physician. Check access site, excess fistula or graft for infection, excess circulation in the distal portion of the extremity, auscultate for bruit, palpate for thrill. No IV or blood should be drawn in the arm where the fistula is or where the fistula is planned. Do not take blood pressure in the same arm. Watch for hypotension. It is very, very common. We have already discussed. We are removing a lot of fluid. So hypotension can happen. There could be infective complications. There could be microbiological colonies on the hub. It gets into the system, bloodstream infection. Hypotension can happen. There could be blood loss, which is leading to hypotension. So you should be aware. Vitals have to be monitored very, very closely. Hypoglycemia is very, very common. Muscle cramps, nausea, vomiting, headache. Headache, if it is out of proportion, it could be a red herring. Watch the patient. If the headache is persisting after dialysis, there could be some bleed, there could be some infarct. So you have to be very, very vigilant. Itching, Less commonly, disequilibrium syndrome, virtually rare now, hypersensitivity reaction, arrhythmias, cardiac tamponade, seizures, air embolism. So all these complications do happen, and we have to be very, very aggressive with identification and treatment. So blood pressure has to be monitored very, very closely. Watch for bleeding. Heparin could be used during the dialysis. So patients who have not been bleeding before dialysis can bleed after or during dialysis. Check weight and compare. Weight loss should be close to fluid removal goals set during treatment. Excess weight loss could be pointed towards a poor nutritional goals which you have set. Always document unusual findings, unusual color of the limb, unusual swelling, increasing respiratory distress, unusual finding on the chest axis. So you have to be noticing all those things and documenting it. Assess excess site for bruit, thrill, any exudates, signs of infection, bleeding. If there is missed medication during dialysis, we have to give those medications also. We have to explain the procedure to the patient first. Consent should be taken, and it is good to do dialysis in ICU because these patients are critically unstable. So taking these patients to dialysis unit is a big no. We should try to set a dialysis bed at least in each of our ICUs. It is very, very easy. If your ICU does not have a dialysis bed or each bed does not have dialysis capacity, you should be discussing with your ICU director. Once the consent for the procedure is taken, the consent for cannulation again has to be taken. Hemodynamics have to be monitored continuously. We have to also monitor for arrhythmias. Acid-base balance, a pre-op ABG, pre-procedure ABG, and after few hours, again we repeat an ABG to look whether dialysis is able to correct what we are trying to correct. Is the potassium level come down? Has lactic acid levels come down? Has potassium and bicarb levels settled a bit? If the dialysis is not able to do it, again discuss that despite this duration of dialysis, we are not able to achieve our goal and try to initiate a dialysis. Monitor electrolytes, ensure sterility of the system, very, very important. Maintain a closed system of everything. Diet, you can be a guide to the patient. Obviously, the dietitian is doing the needful, but again, try to counsel and tell the patient what is to be done and what not to be done. Medications have to be adjusted during dialysis, and some medications have to be given after dialysis. We need to monitor for complications, especially long-term complications. Arteriosclerotic cardiovascular diseases are very, very common. Hypertension is common. Coronary artery disease is common. Congestive heart failure can happen because of the overload and decompensation of the heart because of diastolic dysfunction, stroke, risk of infection, gastric ulcers, hypertension, calcium deficiencies, anemia, fatigue, depression, sexual dysfunction, suicide risk. So these are all happening with long-term dialysis. But you have to be aware of these complications because many of your patients who land up in ICU are CKD patients. You should be aware of all these complications. Diet obviously will be taken care by the dietitian, but you have to educate your patient that do not decrease your protein levels by less than 1 gram per kilogram per day, salt 2 gram per kilogram for 2 milligram per day, potassium 2 milligram per day, and you have to educate the patient depending on the state. Phosphorus causes severe bone and heart problems, itching and tissue calcifications. If phosphate levels are high, patient has to be started on phosphate binders. If there is hypophosphatemia or micronutrient deficiency, especially in long dialysis and chronic dialysis, those have to be corrected. 1.2 gram of protein per kilogram body weight per day for hemodialysis patient, 1.3 gram per kilogram per day for peritoneal dialysis patients, 35 kilocalorie per kilogram body weight for patients less than 60, 30 to 35 kilocalorie per kilogram for 60 years or older. What other complications can arise. Hypertension. Some patients, hypertension will be there regardless of what you do during dialysis, especially CKD patients. These patients will require optimization of antihypertensive therapy. Hyperkalemia may develop due to suppression of aldosterone-dependent colonic excretion of potassium, which is by ACE inhibitors. Anemia is very common. Erythropoietin deficiency is common in dialysis patients. Folic acid is also removed by dialysis, so you should be aware of all these. Iron supplements, either orally or given IV on dialysis, are therefore often necessary. Subcutaneous erythropoietin or the longer analog darbepoetin is often utilized in these patients and given during dialysis. Various other vitamins, especially water-soluble vitamins, are removed by dialysis, so we need to supplement these vitamins. Micronutrients deficiencies, loss of amino acids happen during dialysis. The problems which I am discussing now are generally more with chronic dialysis, bone disease, joint disease, vascular extra-articular calcification, various cardiac diseases, neuropathy. Patients may develop neuropathy due to vitamin B deficiency or due to underdialysis. Both have decreased in frequency now because we supplement vitamin B and rarely we do underdialysis. Patients on long-term dialysis might have problems like carpal tunnel syndrome or some complex pain syndrome. So you should be aware of all these entities. While the patient is undergoing dialysis, we should be very vigilant, especially in the ICU. We'll talk about some common alarms. The first is low excess pressure alarm. Excess pressure is extremely negative. This is alarm for the venous side of the circuit. The pressure gauge here measures negative pressure generated by excess pump, which sucks blood out of the patient and pushes it into the filter. Maximum tolerated pressure here is 250 millimeter of mercury. Anything greater than this will cause a low excess pressure alarm. So you have to be vigilant about this alarm. What are the causes of low excess pressure? The catheter is kinked, the line is kinked, the vas cath is sucking against a vessel wall. See now, suppose this is a vessel and this is the catheter. If your catheter is sticking against the vessel wall, there will be no flow, and then you can have this alarm. The catheter could be of poor design or there could be some malfunction of catheter. You could have inserted a short wide bore catheter with a circular lumen cross section. The lumen is not on the sides, but it's a circular lumen, rarely used nowadays, but we should be aware. Or the blood flow to the vas cath is poor. It could be positional, it could be low blood pressure also, which is causing this. Excess disconnection alarm. This is a very dangerous alarm and it needs just immediate attention. Excess pressure not nearly negative enough. This alarm is triggered if excess pressure is more positive than 10 millimeter of mercury. Usually this means patient has just pulled their vas cath out and machine is sucking air. So this could be detrimental and patient can die immediately because of hemorrhagic shock or because of air embolism. So if the patient has removed the catheter totally or partially, do not just try to cover it up and in a haste you could do more damage. Always call your physician or a senior dialysis technician and discuss with it and do the needful. You have to look for the amount of bleeding which has happened and you have to rule out air embolism which could have also happened. High return pressure extremely positive. This is the alarm for the arterial side of the circuit. The pressure gauge here measures the positive pressure generated by the return pump, which sucks blood out of the filter and pushes it to the patient. The maximum tolerated pressure is 300. Anything greater than this will cause a high return pressure alarm. Causes: line is kinked, vas cath is kinked, vas cath returned lumen is trapped against the vessel wall, catheter has been occluded with a clot, it happens, it has been dislodged and the return lumen is emptying into a hematoma or a pseudoaneurysm. Vas cath was inserted into an artery and nobody noticed. So this all happens. See, you cannot be able to pinpoint on the cause, but you have to identify. Don't be mute, don't be deaf to these alarms, and do not silence these alarms. Every alarm has a reason to buzz. Try to identify the problem or discuss with your colleagues. Low return pressure. This alarm is for the arterial side of the circuit generated by return pump pressure, cause a low return pressure would usually be triggered by a negative pressure. The lower limit for the alarm is usually 0 millimeter of mercury. What are the causes? Low blood pump speed, low blood flow rate, line disconnection, pre-sensor or post-pump line is clamped. So this might sound little complex for you, but you have to be aware of these things. High filter pressure. Filter pressure extremely positive. This is a common thing. This alarm is for filter. One usually hears it when the filter is dying. If you are trying to reuse the filter, there are clots, the filter can block easily and this alarm will be there. When you are doing a heparin-free dialysis, the chances of this high filter pressure alarm going on commonly is more. It occurs when difference between filter pressure and return pressure is greater than 250. In most machines, it will also go off when the transmembrane pressure is in excess of 450 millimeter of mercury. What are the causes of high filter pressure? The filter pressure tends to rise gradually over the course of dialysis session because there will be some clots, some debris which are getting deposited in the filter. The filter becomes clogged with filth, if I call it filth. So this is a part of natural filter degradation. Each session after the first dialysis, the quality will go down. If it rises suddenly, there could be various reasons. Line from pressure gauge to filter has become kinged or clamped. Air embolism of clot or something has become clogged in the line. You set the pre-dilutional replacement solution flow rate too high. So whatever, if this high filter pressure alarm is going on, you have to have a look at the filter. Is there a clot? Is there a kink? Or the flow rates are too high? Discuss with your technician. Transmembrane pressures. Some machines will report transmembrane pressure together with or instead of the filter pressure. Again, usually hear this alarm when the filter is dying, the causes are low. Transmembrane pressure tends to rise gradually over the course of dialysis session as the filter becomes clogged with filth. If it rises suddenly, filtrate line from the filter to the bag has become kinged or clamped. An embolus of clot or something has clogged. Ratio between blood and dialysate flow is too high. High transmembrane pressure with normal return pressure indicates a problem with filter. High transmembrane pressure with high return pressure indicate a problem with return line or with filter. So this is a little complex again. Air detected alarm. The bubble detector has found some bubbles. The cause is there is air in the line obviously. Blood level in the bubble trap is too low. Air detector has detached from the return line. So these are the common causes of air detected alarm. Blood leak alarm should not buzz. If it buzzes, you have to be just very fast. Blood detected in the effluent line has found something it thinks is blood. If there is actual blood in the line, the filter has ruptured. Otherwise, the reasons, it could be actual blood in the line or the blood detector is dirty. Patient has severe hemolysis and the detector is picking up free heme, or patient might have received a recent dose of hydroxycobalamin, which tends to discolor all body fluids and which all will cause blood detector in the dialysis machine to buzz again and again. Set disconnected alarm if the pressure is less than 10 millimeter of mercury. Such a reading would suggest that either the filter line has come off the filter or it has climbed above the pressure transducer and thus nothing is being pumped. This can be readily identified by presence or absence of large amount of blood on and around the machine. Lastly, there is a mute button. Please do not press that button. Look for the cause Discuss with your physicians, look at the patients. If patient is unstable and alarm is buzzing, you have to act immediately. Otherwise also, these alarms are serious. Any amount of bloodshed or filter getting clogged can cause serious implications for the patient. So, as a critical care nurse, you have a double role. You have patients in your ICU who are undergoing dialysis, and as a part of rapid response team, you will be looking after patients who are in dialysis ward, who are undergoing dialysis and have got crashed. So you need to have clinical knowledge, you need to know the complications, what all can arise during dialysis, and how to do problem sorting for all these complications. Always remember safety of unit and the patient both are paramount importance. So whenever you detect a problem, discuss with dialysis team, with physician or your senior nurse. Common problems are common. Do not jump to rare diagnosis. Discuss, you will find a solution easily. Infection control is everybody's business, but as a critical care nurse, you are the inspector of infection control strategies and implementation. Education and guidance for the patient is very important. Some patients will be very skeptical. They might be needing a long term dialysis, so you have to educate that this could be just a short term. Family and patients might also need guidance about further therapies, what to expect out of these therapies, what are the risks. So with your treating team, you have to be ambassador for the patient and do the needful for the patient. Thank you. We could not make a type question, so I'll just read out some questions and you, the nurses, can type the answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, there are some participant who has actually raised the hands.
Yeah.
So I am just allowing them to talk for just raising the
Yeah.
questions. Here the Nagmani is there. So I am allowing you to talk. Please raise your concern. Hello.
Sister Nagmani, hello.
I guess somehow she's been mute.
Barkha,
Uh,
Sister Barkha.
yeah, the next is the Barka Durani. Uh, are you there? And Naveen Kumar, Dr. Kumar. Yeah, I guess they are taking time. So in between, just I need to mention that basically the dialysis, hemodialysis is a part of one of the organ support system other than the lung, and it is the one of the vital organ which is been responsible for excreting a lot of normal things that we produce normally, and in presence of sepsis, we also need to excrete a lot of other things as well. So here I need to mention that the patients who are going to have the dialysis in the critical care unit, either they develop the AKI secondary to some other things, or they are developing a AKI on a CKD, or the CKD patients who are on the maintenance hemodialysis. So these three different scenarios we need to understand because uh, say any patient who is yeah, Naveen. Yeah. So basically, what is, yeah, Naveen, just hold on. After my completions, you can speak out. So basically, any patient who is chronically chronic maintenance hemodialysis, many a times we have seen these the patients who comes to us with the fluid overload syndrome. Most of the time. So we need to understand that these patients may not need a fluid extra to fill up the all the circuit. So this is very important. Another thing, any patient who has developed AKI are secondary to diarrhea or any fluid loss or any blood loss, they may be a separate portions where we need to give a lot of fluid. So these are the few things we need to remember. And the other most important thing that we need to remember that the many of patients in our unit, critical care unit patients go for the dialysis because of the hyperkalemia. So these hyperkalemia patients, please do remember these patients, there may be a chances of having a rebound hyperkalemia after completions, 6 hours completions of the dialysis. So please do remember, we need to recheck the potassium after 6 hours. We should not be very happy that, okay, dialysis has been done, potassium has gone down. So these are the few situations where we need to be keep our things very much on the toes. So this is very important. And nevertheless, the most important thing what Dr. Javeri has said, that we need to prepare the patients. Many patients who are in septic shock, on non-adrenaline, on vasopressor support. So we need to be careful, and we always expect that when we start hemodialysis, patient usually develop hypotensions because of different reasons. Most of the blood is going outside the circuits, and even the circuits produce some sort of vasodilators like histamines, which is also produce more hypotensions. So these are the situations where we need to be careful. And on the contrary, any patient who are coming to is the hypertensive heart failure, CKD patients. So we have started the GTN just to reduce down the, and we have forget to stop the GTN and started the dialysis. Patient may have a severe refractory hypotension and may have. So these few things we need to prepare the patients. We have to look for, this is the man and machine interactions, and we have to look the surroundings as well, which as Dr. Javeri has beautifully said. So these are the few things that we need to remember, and always remember a good outcome of a critical care unit is always depending upon the nursing staff. Whoever the doctor is, who the good doctor is the nursing staff who ultimately take the calls. And the nursing staffs, if they are happy, they are good, they know, they have the knowledge, and they really want to or keen to treat the patients, that unit's outcome is a maximum compared to the vis-a-vis any other units in the world.